Hello, how's everyone doing today? I'm here with special guest Allie Havens. Allie Havens was a weekly co-host for the nationally syndicated pro-liberty talk show Free Talk Live and worked as a writer and co-host for Adam versus the Man. She also had a Liberty Radio Network podcast. She could also be seen in the documentary 101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire. She currently lives in Auburn, Alabama. How are you doing today?
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having me on your show.
No problem. Hold on a second. Anyway, yeah, how's it going? It seems like we just met not so long ago.
I know, yeah, I knew of you, but yeah, we never really talked or hung out until this Porcfest last week, and I was it was really fun, like just talking to you in conversations with the group, but then gave a talk during Porcfest, and I didn't realize you were giving a talk, but I came in and you were just rattling off these stupid things libertarians say, and it was awesome because I was there with my sister and brother-in-law, and a lot of the things you brought up are like things that we've talked about and give libertarians a hard time about saying. So I thought that was amazing, and then you invited me on your show, and so this is just awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, no problem. Yeah, well, I guess we'll talk about that soon. I guess my first question, though, is a little background. How do you become an anarchist? Let's start there. I'll pretend I'm Jeff.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I didn't just become. Some people's stories are that they like were apathetic, and then someone just introduced them to anarchism, and they went from normal person to anarchist in a day. But for me, it was more progression. I think I've always been kind of libertarian-minded. I've always thought that you made the point during your talk about how authority is like do as I say, not as I do type mentality. Was that the gist of your point? I've always found that to be really annoying, the idea of like people imposing their will on you, but not really having reason, and I especially silly if like you weren't hurt anyone or that wasn't the reason. So, I found notes and stuff that I wrote in the past before I ever knew the word libertarian that make me sound a lot like a libertarian, but I didn't really come to like learn the ideas and all the issues until my sister, who worked at the Mises Institute and was like involved with the Auburn University Libertarians, she kind of helped me see a lot of the issues from a libertarian standpoint. And then it didn't take long. It was really the conversations about the roads that made me into an anarchist, because I remember one late night I was talking to my sister, and Mike was her boyfriend at the time. Now they're married, and they're telling me about how like the concept of private roads, and just kind of like the idea had never really occurred to me. And I remember just realizing that there's actually no reason why the government should be providing any services. Like, there's no actual good reason for why the private sector couldn't just do everything. And I remember like driving on the roads and sitting like at a stop sign and being like, this is so asinine. Like, why am I stopped at the stop sign? There's no one coming. And I think that was a moment I became an anarchist.
All right. Yeah. That's interesting. The roads.
Mm-hmm. The roads.
Yeah.
It was the roads that got me.
The roads.
And now it's so evident that they're so bad. Like, it's hilarious the idea that anyone uses them as like an example of why we need the government. It's like, wow, the roads are terrible. They kill so many people. They're like confusing, and yeah, it's just tragedy of the commons and stuff. People are like constantly people are constantly dying and getting accidents and hurting themselves out on the road. So I don't know why people think it's such a hard issue. It's like a great thing to like talk to people about. Let's talk about the roads.
Right. Yeah. All right. Cool. That's interesting. Cool. Yeah. Anyways, so you had a list, I heard, of
yes.
things, right?
I was inspired by you.
Right.
I hope someone got video of your list, because it went over so many things that I thought were really great, and I hope that this is kind of a funny, I was thinking about, like, I don't know who watches the show, but it might be weird to, like, listen to a libertarian judge things that other libertarians say about other libertarians. So it might get a little, a little weird. Because most of my list is, like, things that libertarians will say about what they think it means to be a libertarian. And so I'm judging or criticizing their view of libertarianism. So we'll just see how it goes. I think it'll make more sense when I share my list. But
Sure.
if your audience hasn't seen, I don't know if the video of your talk is out yet, but if they haven't seen your talk, then it goes over so many, I'm just trying to, like, think of things that you didn't already cover. But yeah, so my first one is in my list of stupid things libertarians say. Oh, and I also want to say that I used to say these things all the time, so that's part of how I came up with the list, is that a lot of these things are things that I said in my path. So, if these are things, so I don't want anyone to think that I'm always been perfect libertarian all the time. But the first one is the one that really annoys me the most, is being a libertarian means not telling other people what to do. And it kind of reminds me of, like, the no victim, no crime people, I think, understand libertarianism in a way, but then they kind of confuse where it means to, like, what exactly we're saying. We're just saying that you can't come in and, like, throw someone in jail unless they've committed an actual crime with a victim. But it doesn't mean that you can't have an opinion, It's it's no victim, no crime, not no victim, no opinion. I can, the example I give is, the example I give is, if your neighbor dresses his cat up in a tuxedo every day, right? There's no victim in that. We're not going to send him to jail. But I can be a libertarian and say, cats don't like to be dressed up in tuxedos. Like, you shouldn't do that. I can have an opinion about what my neighbor does, even if he's not necessarily violating the NAP, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. No, I would agree with that. That's sort of like, I've heard some people say, the market has spoken, right? Or, like, if you believe in the free market, you have to believe that every decision made in the market is, perfect. Well, but I don't know if that's true. I mean, there are a lot of things that I like that, maybe a movie I'll like or something, and it'll bomb in theaters, and
Well, yeah, the market's made up of people, and people aren't perfect.
Right, yeah, or another movie like Avatar, which is a piece of shit in my opinion, can make a lot of money, and so no, you could disagree with market outcomes. You could say, I think the average person has pretty shitty tastes, but that doesn't mean that you have a right to say impose what you like on them through force. So, similarly to what you say. So I agree. You could criticize people's behavior all you want. You just can't force them to do what you
want. Exactly. And the whole idea that it's unlibertarian to criticize someone who's acting peacefully is, I think, silly, because if being a libertarian means you can only have an opinion when there's a victim, then I don't think anyone wants to be, we can't help but have opinions about what other people do and judge them. It just means that we don't, just because we think that what they're doing, we might think that they're living their life the wrong way or think it's not the right choice for us, but we just don't get to put them in cages for that. We're not statists, but we're allowed to not like what other people do, if that makes sense.
No,
okay. And then number 2, I don't know if a lot of people have come across libertarians who say stuff like this, but I think that it was pretty, I don't want to say that a lot of people think this, but I used to kind of think this when I first moved to Keene for the Free State Project. I was, like, really into civil disobedience and, like, admired activists who would get arrested for their causes and everything. And so I think that that's cool to, like, look up to people who are willing to stand up for what they believe in, even if it means that they're going to get arrested. But sometimes that makes people think that the only good libertarian is a jailed libertarian. So the whole idea is that some libertarians think that you have to fight for your freedoms. And so, as a libertarian, you're under becoming a libertarian means you're obligated to resist tyranny and certain rules that are, not libertarian. And an example would be some libertarians will encourage other libertarians to not pay taxes or criticize other libertarians for paying taxes. And obviously this doesn't work because libertarianism can't come with a set of there's no how to be a good libertarian. Here's what comes. It's not like being a vegan or something. It's not like, oh, this is going to be a big inconvenience for you. Now that you're a libertarian and see that aggression is wrong, that means that you can't drive on government roads, you can't get a marriage license, you have to, if you start a business, you have to always live in fear because good libertarians don't get business licenses. And of course, you can't use FRNs anymore because that's just supporting the state, so you got to live this life where you're totally living off the grid and using Bitcoin for everything. So obviously we can see that if this is how we think about being libertarians, then no one would be a libertarian. And there's nothing inconsistent with doing what serves us, even if it's, if we're not at the point where we're all using Bitcoin. I'd love to use Bitcoin in all my transactions, but that's going to happen when no one wants to use the dollar anymore. No one wants to use Federal Reserve notes. I don't want to spend all my Bitcoin now, and in the future, all the people who hoarded their Bitcoin are like, oh yeah, I'm glad I did that, and I'm like, oh, I was trying to bring about a libertarian future by spending all my Bitcoin, and because I was trying to be a good libertarian, but it's misleading. We want libertarians to do what is best for them, not what is living in some how we hope the world to be. It's good to dream and talk about these things, but we want to do what serves us now, not how we think. We should re-examine how we think things should be, so that we're not ending up all in. We don't want a future where all the libertarians are in jail. It's basically the idea there.
No, I agree. I don't think any philosophy requires martyrdom, right? I mean, there are people who say, well, it's wrong to use any government services. If you're an anarchist or something. I don't know. I don't think I really understand the logic in that, because using a service is not violating one's rights. Stealing from people to provide a service is. Advocating that they provide the service is immoral because it's encouraging people to provide services at the barrel of a gun. But I think if a person walks into a library, they're not doing anything wrong. I think if someone collects unemployment insurance, they're not doing anything wrong. And you could argue, well, they're receiving, let's say, stolen money. And I'm like, okay, but someone's going to have to receive the stolen money. And I think it's better that a libertarian who gets it than the person who advocates for theft. Otherwise, what are the other libertarians saying? No. You stole it. It's only fair you keep it.
Right, exactly. It's I love the point about if someone's going to get it, I'd rather it be libertarian, just because we naturally like libertarians more. I mean, we're all self-interested and interested in seeing our friends do well. We don't want to be encouraging them to be martyrs and then, waving to them while they're in jail and being like, why did you tell me to do this again?
Right, yeah.
So.
I remember when Ron Paul was running, and there were some people on the left who were like, Ron Paul hates government so much, why is he in government? And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, so the only people who should be in government are those who love it and wanted to see it grow bigger? I don't see how that helps our cause.
Exactly.
Right? It's like saying, you shouldn't be a public school teacher or something if you're an anarchist. Well, public schools exist. That's just the fact of the world. Are you saying you want everyone to be educated by a statist and not be exposed to libertarian ideas while in school? I don't see how that helps you, right?
Well, right.
Public schools not exist, but if they exist, let the positions be taken over by people who are going to spread free market ideas.
Yeah, I love that point. And, when we are asking ourselves, well, what should we do in this situation? What if I want to be an educator? I want to be a teacher. And I'm trying to decide, should I work in the public schools or the private schools? I mean, what's best for liberty? I mean, the whole idea of what's best for liberty is kind of a silly question. What's best for liberty is whatever's best for you. You could. I
don't agree with that. I mean, if you feel it's best to rob and murder and rape people, that's not best for liberty. So I guess it depends. But
well, I get okay. I see your point there. That maybe I misspoke. Maybe I shouldn't say that. But an example of obviously hurting people is bad for liberty. Being a cop and arresting people is bad for liberty. So I'm not saying that. But in these examples where we're talking about, we're assuming that being a public school teacher is not an act of aggression, right? Like, I don't think that personally. So if someone was trying to decide, make their life choices based on what's best for liberty, and it's a question like that, I would say that, I would also not encourage them to become a public school teacher, because we need libertarian public school teachers, right? Like, because it might be better for them to work in a private school. That might be where they're happiest. So I think that we can sometimes get confused trying to decide, like, what would a libertarian do in the situation? What's the best thing for liberty? It's not always so cut and dry.
Right. No, I would agree. I would also, my own view is I think it's okay for anyone to use any government services. It's just not okay to advocate for them. And I think it's okay for anarchists to work in the state as long as the job itself is not coercive. So, theoretically, I guess you could be a police officer if you only arrest people for committing acts of violence, although I don't think you would have that job long. And
exactly.
I guess theoretically, you could be a judge if you only will sentence people for committing violent crimes. And if you could be a judge without, and let it go people who do victimless crimes, I'd probably encourage people to take over those positions, although I don't know how long they'd be in that position. But I would say if the job itself is aggressive, then I think you're probably not acting morally. But if the job itself just happens to be one where government monopolizes the services, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think if you're a mailman, I don't think you're violating anyone's rights.
Yeah, I think that you and I see eye to eye on this. I agree that, but I would think that for a lot of, when it comes to what jobs libertarians should occupy, like you made the point about Ron Paul earlier, some people think that if he's a good libertarian, he wouldn't be running for office in the first place. I think that what you said was good on that, and I also think that the same bad logic can work where people will say that libertarians ought to run for office, because otherwise how are we going to get freedom? Like, if you're a good libertarian, you got to do everything within your power to, that was one of the things about signing the Free State Project has a statement of intent, and part of it is that after you move to New Hampshire, you'll do whatever is in your power to bring about the smallest government, possible, basically. And, it's funny because it makes you ponder, like, what exactly is within my power? It makes you start feeling a little bit helpless when you realize that you don't have a lot in your power. You can run for office, you could, I don't know, but then you start thinking about little things that you do that, you have to weigh everything. It's more about, like, what makes you feel like a libertarian. If using Bitcoin makes you feel like a libertarian, that's great. But then if you end up spending all your Bitcoin and then looking back on it, oh man, like, that was a really expensive pizza that I bought. And it's all about what serves you, I think, is
right. Yeah.
In the end.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think being a libertarian is just a worldview. I don't think it requires you to really do anything. It's, to sort of paraphrase Bill Maher, that's one of the great things about being an atheist, or a libertarian in this case, is that it takes so little of your time. I sort of give the example Evan Isaac has given, and I agree with. If someone says I'm against rape, that doesn't require them to speak out against rape or to knock on people's doors to try to convince them that rape is bad. It's just, as long as you believe rape's bad and that's your opinion, you're an anti-rapist. So, as long as you believe that, you're an anarchist simply if you believe that the government should live by the same standards as everyone else, and that that certain people should not have a double standard of morality and commit violence in areas where it would be not okay for anyone else. It doesn't require you to be an activist or anything else. If you want to be one, that's fine, but you could just not tell anyone about liberty and just keep the thought solely in your head, and that, to me, you're a perfectly good libertarian.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. It doesn't. You're not obligated to do anything as libertarian. Can do extra if you want, but no one's passing out grades, I don't think.
Yeah.
At least I don't think. I'm waiting for that part. I wonder what grade I would get at this point.
There's no board of certification for libertarianism. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I thought that was good. I have goes into the third point. I hear a lot. You might have heard this at Porcfest. this is number 3 stupid things libertarians say is the FSP or some other voluntary organization is behaving like a government. They're being like the government. They instituted this new rule, and it's very draconian, and the FSP is banning people for reasons I don't like, similar reasons why the government will ban stuff, and it just seems very like it's the government. And it's like hilarious because it makes you wonder, like, do these people really quite understand exactly what it is that like separates the government from everything else in the world, in the sense that the FSP can't force anyone to do anything. And it's funny to imagine that some libertarians think that organizations that are voluntary just shouldn't have rules, or they shouldn't ban people. It should just be whoever wants to come and whatever goes. And it begs the question, like, what's the point of having an organization if it's like, we're all one organization, we're all one on Earth. It's like no point organizing in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is funny to me, the idea that voluntary rules within voluntary groups are the same thing as laws, that they can't distinguish the difference between these things. They even will see a lot of voluntary contracts that they think they don't like the terms of it, and so because they think that the terms are unfair, even if it's not their own contract, they will compare it to some coercive thing, like the whole concept of slave wages. I've heard libertarians talking about working for slave wages, and just the whole idea the libertarian could confuse two things that are, it's kind of the whole point, is that we're against coercion. We see like a fundamental difference in like persuading someone to do something versus forcing them to do it. And yeah, we might not like every decision that every person comes to, every agreement. We might not think that we would come to the same agreement. We might not be willing to take on the same job, but that doesn't make it anything like slavery ultimately. Like that's a very different thing. And so it'll surprise me sometimes to hear libertarians like confuse these things and act like they don't quite understand what separates government from everything else,
Right. No, I agree. I mean, a lot of people got upset at the Free State Project for, what they said, censoring Ian Friedman. And I don't know. I think of censorship as, government, like, not allowing people to say certain things and fining them or throwing them to jail. And they didn't do that. They just said, here, people who come here, we don't want them to say certain things. Now, I'm not really a fan of banning people by what they say. I think we should try to encourage provocative things. And if there's something you don't want me to say, then that makes me want to say it. So I think being controversial is a good thing. But no, I don't think he was censored, because last time I checked, they didn't throw him into jail. They didn't fine him. They just said, these are the conditions that you have if you want to come here. I mean, it's like what some people say. Well, if a store says, no blacks in the store, that's like Jim Crow. No, Jim Crow is coercive, and that was government not allowing people who wanted to interact with each other to interact with each other. This is just the guy having some stupid rule in his store, and you could object to it and you could think it's dumb, but it's not like a government at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And my personal thoughts on the whole Ian banning thing was I thought I wanted Ian there. Like, I personally didn't like that he wasn't there and that they banned him. It's not what I would have chosen if I was them. And it honestly, like, if Ian had been there, it would have made the event more appealing to me. It would have made the ticket seem worth more money to me. So we can talk about, like, the point is that the Free State Project bears the cost, not taxpayers, those decisions. And I know that a lot of people didn't go because of that choice and stuff. But that it's great. This is wonderful. Like, people are responding to feedback. Some people might not have gone if Ian had not been banned. I don't know. But I just love that it's not that I can sit here and judge them for making that choice to ban him. But it doesn't really affect me other than I get to choose to come to Porcfest or not. I think that's awesome and stuff. But yeah, I want to say that because, Ian's a friend and stuff, and it's just not the same without him at Porcfest, I missed him in his silly rainbow hat and his tutu. All right, so number 4, because it leads right into it. Have you heard people talking about voluntary government, Daniel? Where they're
like the objectivists with like voluntary taxes or something, right?
Yeah, well, it sounds somewhat. I don't know what the objectivists talk about anymore, but I like it. To me, it sounds like saying dry liquid or happy depression, something like that. People will say it like, in the future we don't have to tell people the government's bad because in the future we could have something like a voluntary government, and it's like it'll be like government except voluntary. And the whole idea that government could be voluntary. I mean, why would we call it government at that point? Why would we continue to call it government if it's all awesome, like, services provided on a voluntary basis? It wouldn't look anything like government. There's no reason why we'd want to call it government that I can think of. Maybe we'll still call it the government. Seems unlikely to me. And as like an anarchist, obviously, the whole thing that makes it a government is that it's not voluntary, is that it's coercive. So that's a funny thing libertarians say. And then,
right?
Should I go on? This is my. Did you want to say something about that one?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's somewhat related. I'm a fan of Walter Block, but he said 2 things somewhat related to this that I disagree with. One is he's like, I'm not an individualist and I'm not a collectivist. He's like, I'm a fan of collectivism if it's voluntary, like team sports. And I said, well, that's not collectivism, right? Collectivism isn't any activity that involves more than one person. It isn't like masturbation is individualist and sex is collectivism. Collectivism is the idea that certain people's rights should be sacrificed for the greater good. I mean, collectivism is inherently coercive, right? It's like saying I'm not an anti-authoritarian because I believe in voluntary authority, right? A doctor who you choose to ignore is not an authority. He's just some guy whose opinion you respect because you think he knows more about this than a certain issue. If I listen to someone because I think he's more educated than me, he's not authority. He's just some person whose opinion I respect, and so I decide to listen to and take his advice. Right? Authority is inherently coercive. Collectivism is inherently coercive. I don't think there's such a thing as voluntary collectivism or voluntary authority.
Yeah, I agree, and it can get confusing because like we'll use terms this way, and then it won't be clear if we're talking about because people will use authority, say that you're an authority on chocolate cake, and I would say yes, but I'm not going to put you in chocolate cake prison. So it can get a little confusing when we're not exactly sure if we mean in the voluntary coercive sense. So I don't know. Should we sit here as libertarians and say voluntary blah 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 and coercive blah blah blah? Voluntary authority, coercive authority. I don't know. But people seem to be confused about it. So maybe something should be done. I don't know. Okay, my last on my list of stupid things that libertarians say is that, and this actually isn't my point. My sister came up with this, but I thought it was a really great point. And it is something I used to say all the time, which is that liberty is all about personal responsibility. And I even used to think that, and I've heard other people say this, similar things, that the reason why certain groups aren't more libertarian, why we don't see libertarians in certain people, or why it's not more popular, is that they don't like the whole idea of having to be responsible for themselves. Like, they basically couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle a libertarian world because, it's like social Darwinism out there, and it's the survival of the fittest, and they just frankly wouldn't survive. So that's why libertarianism doesn't appeal to them, is basically the idea. And this is funny because exactly what liberals want to think that libertarians think, but that's not even the libertarian position. I learned it's just like what we think would happen without the government is that we'd be left to fend for ourselves, and we wouldn't be able to get by, and only the strongest among us would survive. But really, like, I've come to see that that's not even true. Like, the market means that we have to be less and less responsible. Like, that's something that people even criticize about the free market, is that we get so lazy. It spoils us so much. You know, just compare, and then compare it to the government, like the way, compare taxes to like credit card debt, right? Like taxes, they don't tell you, they won't even, you have to figure out yourself. You have to like keep files and tell them how much you owe them. And then if you get it wrong, then you're responsible for making up the difference, and you're always constantly working for them. Whereas with credit card debt, they'll like forgive debt. You can pay it off whenever you, I mean, I know that there's certain, like some people might disagree because they've, I don't know, had bad experiences with credit card companies, but compare it to the way the IRS operates, and I would say I'd much rather, you know, have credit card debt. Allowed to get away with so much more. They really baby us, you know. I saw this commercial for this app where it'll tell you if your if you left your garage door up, you know, things like that, where, you know, this is the market making it so that that is the greatest social safety net that we could have. Like, it's there for us when we don't remember stuff. It reminds us of things. It forgives us when we do the wrong thing, and it's always trying to make us better, you know. So I think it's a point that we should stop making as libertarians, that we got to be more responsible to be able to handle a libertarian world. I think that that's not true. I think that the government asks a lot more of us. The government expects us to be like, keep up with all these papers our whole lives. Like, hold on to a little piece of paper my whole entire life? That's crazy. Really? Who is that responsible? They're going to hold on to my social security card my whole life. Like, we're talking about everyone do this, you know? I could see certain responsible people being able to handle that, but no, most of us just, you know, we're just not responsible enough for a government. We can't handle it, you know? We gotta be able to make mistakes every once in a while. We need the market to be there to help us when we do. And that's my list.
Cool. No, I agree with the list. I agree with that. No, I think a free market is about the division of labor. I mean, there's a great short story, I'm sure many libertarians know about it, called I, Pencil, which is that no one knows how to make something as simple as a pencil, right? The division of labor exists because we can't do everything ourselves, right? I mean, you know, not all of us make, there does seem to be this view that some fringe libertarians have, well, that sounds like a redundant phrase, which is, I have to be off the grid, and I have to make my own clothes and grow my own food and stuff like that, which is, of course, nonsense. I mean, you could go to the doctor, you could have someone make food for you and engage in trade and exchange. So, no, I agree with that. Another thing also, I didn't mention this in my speech, that some libertarians say, which I disagree with, is libertarianism is about a fundamental change in human ethics, and we're engaged in a moral revolution and moral improvement that's necessary in order to make anarchy work. Or I had this debate with Victor Pross, who said there's no such thing as human nature, and I disagree with that. I think that's sort of stupid. I agree with Larkin Rose in this. All we need is just to get rid of the idea that the state is morally legitimate, and that's it, right? I mean, that's why I disagree with some anarchists who are like, people are ready for anarchy now. I don't know what that means. If the government didn't exist thousands of years ago, people would have been fine. It's not like we needed one and now we're ready for anarchy. No, there was never a point in time where people needed a government, and now's the time where they don't need one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, the whole idea that, well, yeah, the government's been great all up in this point. I mean, it's been really helping us along. It's been like training wheels, you know, but I think we're right. No, it's like the government has been like, you know, whatever, like a terrible addiction or something, like it's more appropriate, or maybe I like people comparing it to like a cancer, where it's like, no, this whole time it's been holding us back and like killing us off in huge amounts. Like, you know, this is crazy.
Cancer. Right, that's what it sounds like. Human beings,
Yeah.
we've reached the point where we're mature enough to get rid of cancer. No, there's never a point where cancer was needed. You could get rid of it at any time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We have the antidote here, but we're afraid to use it because we're already not ready to be cancer-free.
Right. And also the idea that we need a fundamental change in ethics. I mean, I certainly don't believe that. I mean, there are some libertarians who act like, well, you know, if first of all, there's some libertarians who act like the state is the only violent gang on earth, and that if you know, we had anarchy, you know, there would be peace and everyone would get along. And you know, it's not true. Human beings are human beings.
Well, I kind of think. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, compared to how it looks now, I think it would basically be that way. Like I'm saying, let's take for granted that this is the future. The future where there's not going to be a government in the future. It's going to be, you know, libertopia, and I think it will. I think if that happens, and we could go and see it now and like compare it to today, we'll be like basically like no one hurts each other. Like there is no aggression. I mean, sure, people wonder about, you know, if they were allowed to hurt each other, would they? You know, this is something we think about, but like, basically it's completely impractical to try to hurt someone in the future because you're like, it's just, we're all like too protected. It's like someone could try, but then the security is just too great. You've got the private sector providing security for us and defense on an individual basis. Like, I don't know. I just think that
they say around like 2%.
We'll survive. And
they say around 2% of humanity is coming as psychopaths. So I think you'd still have that 2% that exists. I mean, I certainly don't believe that the government is the only violent gang. I just think that they're the biggest and they're the only one that gets away with it because people put them on a pedestal. But I certainly believe that there'll be other smaller gangs, right? It's like when people say, you know, war is an invention of the state. Well, it depends how you define war, but if you define a war as a fight with, you know, two large groups or something, war isn't a creation of the state. You can have, you know, the Sharks and the Cribs or the Reds and the Blues or the Hatfields and the McCoys. You can still have small gangs engage in war and battle. So I don't think that that's a unique function of the state. I don't think it would be on the level or as damaging as the wars that the state commit. But war itself, I don't think is unique.
I just think it's like I mean, you don't think that the market would do I mean, just imagine if you got the private sector in there, like, and the whole point is protect me, like, make sure no one can hurt me, basically. And it's not just me, it's everyone. Everyone wants this. Everyone wants to feel safe and secure and protected. And no one really wants to, like, have to kill anyone to do it. We just kind of want them to not be able to get us, is the main idea. I think that's what most people want. Maybe we want to get them. Maybe some people want to get them. I don't know. The people who want to hurt you. Some people want to set up booby traps or something. We could argue about whether or not that's something the market should or could provide. But the whole idea that, like, well, the market can do its best, but there's always going to be people who can get you. There's always going to be people who can hurt you and make war. I mean, war is not just, like, the health of the state. Basically, the war is, like, completely a state thing. I can't imagine how it could exist without the government. Like, why? How? Where?
You had families who would fight each other even before, you know, the state exists. You had, you know, I mean, you look at gangs today. You know, I mean, you have certain, you know, private gangs that exists. You know,
yeah, but they're like, you know, those fish that, like, will, like, hang out with other fish and they just kind of, like, hunch on. That's how I see gang. Like, the state is like the big whale, and gangs are like the little fish that just feed off of them. And, you know, like, it's like they're only there because they can get away with it because the cops are too busy putting us in jail for having pot on us, you know. And so the gangs, it's like, woo! It's like open field for them because anyone who's willing to, like, use violence to get their way. Well, you know, these cops are the cops have the monopoly on protecting people, and they're completely incompetent and bureaucrats. And then on top of all that, they got them doing stuff, like, they're filling up their time with stuff that doesn't involve victims. So the cops have no reason to even really go after the gangs except for drugs and stuff. They're not even going after them for hurting people, you know? It's like open field for anyone who wants to use aggression to get their way. because no one, because basically if anyone did want to be like, I'm going to be a private protection agency, it's like, no, 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 the government has a monopoly on that, you know? We already have to pay tax dollars for that. Imagine if we could like take those tax dollars back and use, instead of paying the cops, use all that money to pay for a private company to do it. Like how much better it would be, how much farther the money would go.
Right, no, I think you'd have less violence, but I mean, unless you're going to have an armed bodyguard with you 24 hours a day, I mean, you're just in an elevator with someone alone. It's possible that they can.
I mean, it could be that I could afford that if it wasn't for the state, you know, have an armed bodyguard all the time.
Well, I don't think. Yeah, but I mean, are you going to have an armed bodyguard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? I mean,
I don't know. Like, how much money would I be getting back? It's hard to. I have to like quantify. It's hard to quantify it. Like, would it be hard to find? You're telling me I couldn't like find someone in the world who's like super, super poor and just be like, here's a gun. You stand there. Oh, I don't have to pay taxes anymore, so I got this money to pay you, and I'll give you $5.
right. You freeze? Hold on. Hold on, I think it looks like she froze. Hello? Hey.
Hey, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No problem.
Yeah, I think I could have an armed security. I mean, it's possible. I'm just saying. I don't know. I don't know what's possible. I don't know exactly what it would be. That does seem a little far-fetched. It seems like that might not be practical for everyone. But the whole point is that, you know, I wouldn't have been able to predict cell phones before they existed. Like, I wouldn't be able to predict the internet. I wouldn't have. All these things are just like, you know, your mind's blown. You can't believe that. How does it work? And this is just so amazing. So I just like am really optimistic about what could happen if you. If the government got out of the private sector's way and let us find solutions. I just think that we're really good at helping each other out, you know?
All right, well, hopefully we'll be able to find out one day. See?
I hope so.
Yeah. 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 But anyway, I was saying there does also seem to be this view of you know, there's no such thing as human nature. You know, I mean, Ayn Rand sort of believed in the blank slate theory that people come into the world and they have like everything they learn is basically just from their observation of reality or is imprinted on them based on their environment, and you know that there's no such thing as, I guess, human nature, which I think is wrong in my opinion. And I think, you know, an example to sort of prove that is sort of babies that cry, you know, when they get food. Like, no one taught them to do that, right? So people do have certain character traits, and I think to ignore human in nature, I think is not.
I'd never heard that point made before, that there's no such thing as human nature, that everything about you is learned. Is that basically the point? That like everything about you has been learned. It's all nurture, no nature.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
There are people who have that.
I mean, that's an interesting perspective, and I kind of don't know. Like, that doesn't seem to account for everything. I feel like if I had that view, I would be like, yeah, what do they say about the crying thing? What do they say? I mean, are they like, well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about things like crying and using the bathroom and eating and drinking water. Are they talking about that stuff too? Like, we learned all of that?
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't sound right to me. I mean, and I think that I kind of thought the original point with that was that let's see, that oh yeah, okay, so the whole idea that we have to change our whole view of ethics, like there has to be some big revolution in how we interact with one another. Is that kind of part of the point too?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'd say to that is that I would disagree that there has to be some huge shift, perhaps in how we view the government, like just our thoughts about what the government is and everything. I think that's important. But I think our day-to-day interactions with each other are mostly peaceful, or, you know, almost totally peaceful. Like, we don't, maybe there's like little acts of aggression here and there that like no one's going to say anything about because no one really cares, but like technically, you know, those are my sunglasses. I didn't say you could wear them, but it's fine. You know, maybe that kind of stuff happens. But like our day-to-day interactions are so peaceful. I don't think that we really have to like keep how to be peaceful. We already naturally know. We're already doing it. We've been doing it forever. It's just that like this whole concept of the government kind of confuses us because it seems like there's got to be a place for force. Like there's got to be some people in society who just make sure that bad things don't happen. And I don't know. I could speculate about the psychology of like what creates the state. You know, like what is it? Why does the state exist? What is the fear that manifests as the government? I'm not exactly sure, but I think that as far as like, I think we already know how to do this. We already know how to be peaceful, how to trade with one another, how to, like Porcfest is an example of that. You know, you go to Porcfest and you're like, wow, you know, I've always known actually that it could work, but I hadn't ever seen like a example of it until now, and you just see how it kind of makes you just like want to tell everyone to like quit their jobs and just come live in New Hampshire, you know, be part of the Free State Project, so we can all just continue to do this whole Porcfest thing all week. But you know, we'll get there eventually. We'll see.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. The vast majority of statists are not violence. They just support violence, unfortunately. But I don't know. I think Porcfest is somewhat of a bad example for two reasons. One, I think the statist response to that would probably be something like, well, it's easy to have a society that's relatively peaceful if everyone in it has the same ideology. So in Porcfest, pretty much everyone's an anarchist. So like, okay, great. So you're saying that the way to achieve an anarchist society is that everyone has to be converted into anarchy? Well, what's the realistic that's going to happen, that everyone's going to have the same moral theory? So if you're saying that the anarchy will work when everyone in the world is becoming anarchist, sure, but how is that realistic?
I mean, it's not like anyone thinks that Porcfest would come crashing down if a statist showed up. I mean, I'm sure there's been statists there. I mean, right? There have to be. I'm sure everyone's been there before. I don't think the people who like work at Rogers, you know about anarchy.
Or they may say, you know, that's only a week, and you know, violence takes time. If it was all year round.
I have wondered that, like, how long, like, if Porcfest continued, like, after a week, would it turn into, like, you know, we're all at each other's throats, and there's all kind of, like, schisms. I think it'd be fine. I think that that's basically what the Free State Project is like, noticing that, like, this whole community thing is awesome, and I love all being connected and knowing about each other's business, you know, doing business with each other. Like, we used to do community market day when I lived in New Hampshire, and that was fun. And I like being around other libertarians is just awesome because you don't have to like talk about that stuff. It's not like some sore point, you know. It's weird when you have like friends that aren't libertarians and you just don't talk about certain things because it could get too heated. So I like that. But then, yeah, it is interesting because it doesn't mean that people always agree. Like, you learn that being a libertarian, like we said at the beginning, doesn't come with a whole like list, like a whole lifestyle along with it. It's like everyone has their own little individual lifestyles, and yeah, these like lifestyles don't always clash. We don't always like what the other ones do. We think that they're living their life wrong, and it's unlibertarian, and it's got to stop.
Well, yeah, we're all different, and people are also libertarians for different reasons. I mean, my own view is I've sort of been criticized for this view, but my own view is, to me, the most important thing is critical thinking. I don't really care if you're a libertarian or not. I would much rather someone be a statist and actually be able to be a critical thinker than someone who's an anarchist because, I don't know, they were persuaded by the charisma of a Larkin Rose Molyneux type that it's clear that they're not really a critical thinker, right? Like at Porcfest last year, there were these kids who were just walking down the street. They were like 5 years old, and they were singing, "Taxation is theft, taxation is theft." I laughed, but am I saying, oh, this is great, they already know this at 5? No, it's clear that they're just brainwashed by their parents who are anarchists. Like, this is not something that I think is great. I want to encourage free thinking.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I do wonder about these kids whose parents are anarchists. Like, are they going to become big statists as teenagers to rebel against their anarchist parents? I don't know exactly how that'll work. But, you know, it's kind of a funny question. But I do agree with you that you'll sometimes meet these anarchists or just libertarians, and you'll kind of feel like maybe they... Like, I remember when I was becoming a libertarian, before I even was like willing to call myself a libertarian, let alone anarchist, I had to like know the libertarian position on everything. I wanted to be sure, because I knew that word, if you start calling yourself a libertarian, people want to know what you think about things, and you don't want to go in there half-cocked, not knowing what you're talking about. And I would sometimes end up in conversations, and I'd be like, I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure the libertarians say this, but I don't really have like I don't have this empirical stuff you want. I don't know how to answer your statist arguments. I don't know what to say. It was very frustrating. So I really felt like I wanted to know what I was talking about before I became a libertarian, or started saying that, calling myself that. But then I will meet people, and I'll feel like they're just not ready. You know, like someone told them to leave the nest before they were ready, and they're just kind of floundering on the ground. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not exactly sure why they're libertarians. They just know that it sounded really cool at the time to start calling themselves that, or start saying libertarian-like stuff. I don't know, and it's just, they're not really fooling anyone, I think. But, you know, I think that I don't want to judge different people's paths. I don't want to, I feel like I can't know if I came to libertarianism because I'm such a great critical thinker and I'm so smart and look at me, or if it was just because my sister made it seem really cool. I don't know. It's hard to say, but once you're exposed to it, even if you haven't been like fully exposed or quite know all the different nuances and arguments, you can't help, like, once you're presented with the truth, when it makes sense and it's all consistent, it's kind of hard to go back from that, you know? Right. It's kind of like once you really get it, you can't deny it, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Right. I mean, you heard sometimes about these stories who, like, there are people who, like, were big fans of Ron Paul, and then later they voted for, like, a Bernie Sanders. And I'm like, these are totally, like, opposite philosophies. So, I mean, are you just thinking, oh, this guy seems not mainstream, I want to gravitate towards anything that's not mainstream, and I reject anything that's mainstream, and I mean, I think Bernie Sanders is pretty mainstream, but I mean, so yeah, so you wonder, you know, I mean, are these people just like, you know, it's like people who, like, you know, said I was an atheist when I was younger just because I guess they associate it with rebellion or something.
I think that maybe both of us sound like jerks right now. I think we might just be like being purists or being some kind of like, ooh, these new libertarians are just not good enough. Because, I mean, I just want to point out that it's kind of weird to think that libertarianism has become cool to the point that people want to fake being libertarians, right? Like, I mean, that's a good thing. That has to be good, right? People like are being libertarian posers. Then that means that maybe they suck, and maybe they'll confuse some people and say some stuff that's not libertarian, and that's not good, I guess, in and of itself. But it means that lots of people, for every one of those, there's a bunch of people who are becoming libertarians because they were exposed to the ideas, and they were like, oh my god, that makes perfect sense. I've always wondered what the hell's up with the money. The money is all weird. I could tell that from when I was little, and now it makes perfect sense. Or whatever the issue is, you know, we all have our issue. What was your issue, Daniel? What got you into it?
What made me an anarchist?
Or whatever. Like, what was did you have like a pet issue where you're just like, man, the government sucks when it comes to this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've always considered myself to sort of be anti-authoritarian. I don't know. Growing up, like pretty much every authority figure in my own life was a hypocrite. I thought they didn't follow their own rules, and that's sort of what pissed me off. I thought the rules were just stupid and arbitrary.
Like what? What was like a rule that really made you mad?
Just anything. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, there was a teacher I had, and if your cell phone would ring in class, even if you shut it off right away, she would kick you out of class for the rest of the class, which, is fine. Cell phones ringing in class, they're annoying. But sometimes her cell phone would ring, and she would leave class talking for 10 minutes and then go back, and that sort of like pissed me off, right? Like you're a hypocrite. Yeah. Or, parents who curse and, would punish their children for cursing or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know, I just felt, if it's good, why don't you do it yourself? And, so I sort of just associated with authority figures, just people just like telling other people what to do. They like bossing other people around. And it's not really about having these rules that are necessary, because if it was, they would follow them as well. And so I sort of just hated just all authority, and, just a little power goes to people's heads. I think I said this during the speech. If your job is simply to rip up someone's ticket and tell them what seat to go in this baseball stadium, that can go to people's heads. So why should you be in charge of like a military or something? So I don't know. I think I just naturally had, anti-authority tendencies. Also, I know this is very hard to believe, I was not a popular kid, and
what? Daniel the sexiest?
I know, right? And I don't know. I got beaten
Me neither.
up.
I was not popular in high school at all. I think that anyone who was popular in high school right now, it's fair to say they probably suck once they get it. I'm just kidding.
I hated high school so much that I hate anyone who liked high school. Not only did I hate high school, I hate anyone who liked high school. But
I feel the same way. I've like known people before that I thought I was friends with, and then we talked about high school, and they're like, "Man, don't you miss it?" I'm like, "No. What do you miss about high school?" We get this big argument. It's like traumatizing for me.
I hated elementary school, and I would get beaten up a lot. But in my case, it wasn't like, a lot of times you see these movies where like the bully is sort of like a loser who's just mad and takes his bullying out on like the weaker people. And that wasn't my experience. Typically, the bully in my case was like, it started out with like the most popular kid in class, and he was typically the bully, and everyone wanted to follow him, and it was sort of gang bullying. And a lot of the people who bullied me one-on-one were very nice. Like they would say, "Hey, you want to hang out?" And I'm like, "No, because I don't hang out with people who are two-faced." But what that showed me in my experience is that individuals one-on-one can be very nice, but when they're in a group, people want to conform and are willing to commit violence because they have this mob mentality. And I think that's the real reason most people are statists. I think most people are statists isn't because I think it's right to initiate violence against peaceful people. I think most people are statists because they don't want to make waves, and they don't want to be hated. They want to be loved, and they want to engage in a philosophy that people will think they're cool, and they don't. Most, I think, of human interaction is, I'm going to follow these mindless, stupid rules just so people will like me. And I think if anarchy was a popular thing, most people would be anarchists. Well, that sort of sounds like a tautology, but I think it is true. I mean, I think people are statists not because necessarily they like initiating violence against people, or even because they put the state on a pedestal. It's just because they say, well, I don't want to have an opinion that'll make me not popular, and so let me just don't make waves. And I also think that, most people don't even think about these issues, right? Like the vast majority of people just don't give a shit about politics. They're worried about their own life, feeding their families, and most people think like, what's the point? Like, politics is a waste of time. I can't fight City Hall. Knowing about these issues is just going to make me depressed. I have enough stress in my own life. Like, it's not like knowing that the state's evil is going to make it destroyed. So let me just, spend my time worrying about the things I can control. And I am very sympathetic to that. So, I don't really blame people for being statists.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wonder if that last part is really about the whole, well, I don't want to be, like, what do I have time to worry about these things, might be more of a reaction to what they think it's like to be a libertarian. Because, for a while it was like that, where you just start adding libertarians on your Facebook, and before you know it, your newsfeed is really depressing. Like, they don't hesitate to post, like, real videos of war scenes. Like, who are these people? That is not socially acceptable. You don't show me stuff like that. I'm just trying to, like, have my morning coffee. I don't want to see the stuff that they'll post. And And it's not just that, it'll be sad story after sad story. And I get wanting to be informed and like knowing what's going on, and sometimes that stuff can be like genuinely interesting, and you find out that, you know, the stupid stuff the government's doing every day, and it's interesting to keep up with for some people. But then a lot of times it'll just be depressing, but it doesn't have to be. Like we were saying before, being libertarian doesn't mean you have to know about every little issue. It just means that you think that it would be ideal if we didn't like commit aggression on one another. Like if we just made that one little change, you think that then maybe that would be a little better. That's all it means, is that you have that as an ideal, and you know, it doesn't have to come with all this depressing lifestyle that you have to live off the grid and be informed about everyone who's been arrested for some bullshit that they shouldn't have been arrested for. You know, yeah. I think it's like whatever you make of it is what it is. And you know, it doesn't have to be this terrible life as a sad libertarian. You know, you could be a libertarian and still love your life and in some way accept that there's a government and that we have to like figure out ways around it. You know, I think that's part of it for most people, is you have like a really angry phase. You're like really mad that the government exists and that it's been doing this stuff and that people aren't aware, and why don't people wake up? And you start to think about the fact that there's more of us than them, so like it shouldn't be that hard really for us to overcome and rise up. But then, man, all these people support the government, so maybe they kind of are the government. Are my neighbors kind of making the government happen? And then you kind of hate everyone, and then, you know, I think at some point you realize that you can't live your life like that. You got to get out of your mom's basement. You know, I'm living with my mom right now, so I'm not judging anyone. And I don't know. I think that, you know, life as a libertarian is a lot like life before I was a libertarian, except that I've had this whole, you know, deal with realizing that there's this whole other aspect of the world that, you know, it's like getting out of public school. It's like waking up from a bad dream. You're like, oh my gosh, it's over. Like I never have to wake up and go to this godforsaken place again. But then no, you spend the rest of your life worrying about going to prison. You know, you just worry about having to go back there to, you know, it's really easy to make the comparison between prison and public school, although I've never been to prison. But what keeps me afraid of it is my memories from public school. So, you know, there's that. And it would be really nice if we could live in a world where we didn't have to like be so where normal, good, peaceful people never had to worry about ending up in a place like that ever again. They could just rest assured that they're a good person, so they don't have to worry about that. You know, this is the kind of that. Just imagine what a load off our shoulders that would be.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think part of life is realizing that you just have to follow sometimes dumb rules and just figure out how to not let it consume you. I mean, I don't like cops, but you know, my philosophy is if a cop stops me, I'm just going to be like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to fight him because I know I'm not going to win. I know he can kill me with immunity, and what's the point? And I've had interactions with cops, and it's not been pleasant. I mean, I remember I was on the subway in New York City, and the subway train was stationary, and apparently it's illegal to walk in between the subway cars to go to one part to the next. And so I did that. And these cops, who I guess were undercover cops, stopped me and gave me a $75 ticket. And at first, you know, I said to them, like, I didn't know, you know, can you let me off easy? And one of them said, we could have you arrested. And, you know, I sort of wanted to say, although I didn't, you could also kill me. So I guess I should be thankful if you arrested.
Right, exactly.
Because I know they're cops and I know they're pigs, and you just have to grit your teeth and say okay, and you know, I don't know, take it like a bitch sometimes.
Yeah, you know, what's funny to me about that story is that they were undercover, so it's as if like some stranger came up to you and was like, I'm going to give you a ticket for that bullshit I just saw you do. You know, it's like basically what libertarians do is that the whole concept of undercover cops is funny to me because it's like what actually does separate you from everyone else, though, is that I guess I have to take your word for it that you're the government. Why can't I just go around and start saying, I'm an undercover cop, so I'm going to start bossing people around and writing tickets left and right, you know? It's really funny.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of like seeing the costumes. You know, if you're going to be a violent thug, I want the blatantness.
I want to know. Yeah, I want to know, too. I really don't like the whole idea that they could be in hiding. I like to see them in their uniforms, and I wish their uniforms were, like, more noticeable or something.
I don't like them just wearing normal clothes, wearing the shorts. And
yeah.
I also, I mean, it was in the summer, I think, and they were wearing shorts, which I don't like. I wish they were wearing really hot, uncomfortable clothes that itch them and maybe would give them some burns. And
like wool or something.
Yeah. They would have to wear, ideally, all
maybe that's kind of stuff we should do. Like we should, like, try to get in there and, like, petition for stuff like that. You know, just, like, little things to make their lives just a little bit, like, just really hate being cops. Like, make some rule about how their uniforms have to be made out of wool, or make some rule about how they're not allowed to have any air conditioning, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of good examples, but little funny things, because they wouldn't see that necessarily. They wouldn't know that you're just trying to monkey wrench. They would just think that, you know, you got some friends in the wool industry like everyone else trying to make a buck, right?
Yeah. And what I really hate about it, because when they gave me the ticket, of course, they said, like, we're doing this for your own safety because you could fall through the cart and die. You know, even though it was stationary and, like, the things are this wide, he's like, people have fallen to their death, so we're doing this to protect you. And I wanted to say, but I'm not going to, because they have guns and they could kill me. I'm like, if I don't pay the ticket, what would happen? Would you be saving my life, or would you throw me into jail? So don't. Just admit you're trying to extort me for $75. Don't pretend you're doing me a favor. And I'll say this to people who, like, want to be cops. I was talking to some girl who's like, I don't know if she started it yet, but she was going to go to, like, cop academy or something. And I said to her, why do you want to be a cop? And she's like, well, I want to help people. I'm like, what does that have to do with being a cop?
What did she say to that?
She's like, I don't want to talk about this. And I'm like, so then you don't really care to know if you're helping people or not, because you just want to put your head in the sand and don't talk about these issues, right? Like, don't be a cop. Know what you need.
So do you believe her, though? Do you think that she really wants to be a cop to help people, or do you think that that's just a good reason that she's come up with for saying it?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe she is a deluded idiot and wants to be a cop to help people. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and just assume she's a moron.
Right.
I don't know. I think people are cops for numerous reasons. I think a lot of people are cops because they like, you know, telling other people what to do and bossing people around. I mean, cops have been interviewed saying, you know, doing the no-knock raids is really a rush of adrenaline, and they enjoy doing it. I mean, I sort of, not a huge fan of Stefan Molyneux, but I sort of do agree with him in this area. Like, if women just said, we're not going to fuck you if you're a cop, like, I think that would be, like, a really great strategy. Right? Like,
I mean, it would, it could, but that's part of, I mean, I'm saying that, yeah, but, like, I'm an anarchist, and I'm already of that position, and it's not strategic, it's just because that's gross. Like, ew, they're gross, they're cops. I just hate them. So, like, you know, we could just make all the females libertarians, and then we would get that, and then, you know, I'm just saying, yeah, the women who like cops like that about them. You know, same women who like military men, they like something about them murdering people, or something about them having that kind of coercive control is, like, appealing to some people. I don't understand it, but I'm saying I think that it's not just like.
I don't even necessarily know if it's true. There's a libertarian girl who I won't mention her name, but she had this post where there's this guy she's dating, and he's in the military, and she's like, I know I'm gonna get shit for this, but I really love him, and I thought of giving her shit for it because it's a big deal. I mean, you should either try to convince him that it's wrong and that he should get out of it, or, you know, break up with him. I mean,
it's really hard. Like, I'm trying to imagine if that happened to one of my friends, what I would say, and I think it's hard because, like, you know, you don't want to stand in the way of true love or anything, but
I do.
You do? Okay.
No problem.
Yeah, especially if you love him, don't be with him. Because then you'll be justifying, you'll be putting up with all kinds of stuff if you love the guy. Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard because, I mean, does she have a thing for military guys in general? Like, has she been with a lot of military guys?
I mean, I
Because
don't
then
know.
I start to wonder.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that I find fascinating is if you love someone, you're willing to ignore all these obvious flaws that they have. And if you don't like someone, the littlest thing they do is an excuse to not have them in your life, which I just find fascinating, right? I mean, there was a case of this girl, it's a true story, this girl was dating this guy, and I guess he was friends with the mob, and he said to her, he had one of his guys throw acid in her face, and she was permanently blind, and she stayed with him. And one of the things that I would love to see is what excuse she gave to the people who she dumped. Like, they must have been really bad, and they probably weren't. It's just, when you're in love, well, not everyone's perfect, so he threw acid in her face. All of our
Yeah.
Oh, but I broke with this other guy because he snored really loud. I mean,
Yeah.
if you love someone, you're willing to ignore really obvious bad flaws, and if you don't like someone, the littlest thing they do, you're willing to ignore. But I don't even know if I believe in true love. I think people can learn to love people. I mean, they used to have arranged marriages, and you had very low divorce rates when that happened. I think, and a lot of people love their family, and I think love is something you could just learn. If you're like stuck with someone, you sort of learn to care about them.
Yeah, it's true. This is interesting. This took an interesting turn. I want to agree with you in some way, which like my childhood self, which grew up watching Disney movies, I thought that it was like one true love, right? Like you just like, I used to think about like, man, the whole world should just like be one big speed dating, because if it really is like there's one person for everyone, and we're just taking for granted that one person for you is like alive right now, around the same age as you, so that you can have a life together, then shouldn't we all be like speed dating, each other, so that we can increase our likelihood of finding that one person? But now I'm realizing that, like you're saying about your point about the arranged marriages and stuff, is that it could be that this whole idea that like there's the one true love for you out there is what makes a lot of people break up, because they just like always think that there's someone better that's like right around the corner. They got to go find where they're, like, oh, I thought that you were my one true love, but it turns out you're not. I got to keep looking. Goodbye. And that mentality is going to follow you into the next relationship. So yeah, I think on some level you're onto something about how like maybe love is more of a choice than we think. Maybe we should re-examine how we think about these things, because I can see how your attitude about it could affect how you behave in the relationship. And thinking of love as a choice, I think actually seems more consistent with like what makes relationships work. But what do I know? I like that. I think you might be right.
All right, thanks. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, look, there are certain people you're never going to like. There are certain people who you're going to be pissed off with. But I mean, look, a lot of families, I mean, one of the things that I find very interesting about the family relationship is that these are people you don't pick, right? I mean, maybe parents choose to have kids, but even that, but like, there are people who are like, I love my kid more than anyone on the planet. But like, there are people who are pregnant who feel like relationships with their kid when that person's not even like when that person has like no personality yet. I find this just amazing. How can you love something that you know like nothing about and you've had no real relationship with? And I don't know, I guess love is irrational.
I mean, that makes it easier in a lot of instances, like to love something. Think about people with their pets, unborn babies. I mean, they're the most lovable things on this earth. And part of it is that they don't really have like, it's hard to like project bad things onto them. And when you are really close to someone, like we say, like your best friend or something is a choice. You choose your best friend. I mean, circumstances may have like brought you together, but like I can't think of a better thing that's like, well, that's clearly your choice, who your best friend is. But then, you love them, but that's like a different thing than loving your dog or something, right? I mean, your dog might have a personality, but I'm just saying you really know your best friend and you know their flaws and you've seen them at bad times and you see them at their good times, and so you just it means more to love a person, I think. I think the more you know someone and still love them, the more that means, for me personally, right?
Yeah.
Someone I just met loves me. It's like, oh, well, wait till you get to know me. I'm just kidding.
Like grow on you over time. I mean, I've heard people, and in my own experience, sometimes I've been on dates and it'd be like, I didn't feel fireworks. And I'm like, what do you expect? Like to meet someone and then you faint the moment you see them? Oh my God, you're amazing. That sounds like you're retarded. Like, what?
You should try that. That would probably work on a girl. Be like, whoa, the fireworks. Aren't they blinding? She'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't feel it.
That should be enough. And that's sort of my criteria. You're not, I mean, but I mean, there are certain people who I also think the longer you know someone, the more you're willing to tolerate them. Because like I have a friend, and I didn't know this until like probably 8 years after I was friends with him. And I found out like he's a bigot, doesn't like black people. And like if I knew that like the day I met him, I wouldn't be friends with him. But I'm like, but now that I've known him for 7 years, I'm like, well, he's not violent, and this is just a view he has. And I'm like, I've already been friends with him 7 years, whatever. It's who he is.
Do you feel like he was keeping his racism from you so that you wouldn't break up with him?
Well, we're not going out. We're just friends. But, But no, I have no idea. I mean, I have no idea what the...
I mean, 8 years you didn't know he was a racist?
Yeah, I guess he hit it well. I mean, now I tease
like that. I just feel like if you're a racist, it's hard to be a racist on the side, right? Like, most people who are racist, racism is their main deal. Like, that's mostly what they think about, right? I mean, if you didn't think about race that often, why would you be a racist? If you could effectively hide it from someone for 8 years, maybe he became a racist when he knew you.
I mean, that's possible. I mean, now I'll tease him about it. Like, if we're walking on the street or outside his building, sometimes maybe he'll see a black person and say hello, and I'm like, why did you say hello? I thought you were a racist.
Call him out on his lack of racism. You're like, you're not being a very good racist.
Yeah, I'm like, you're not doing a very good job with your racism. And they're like, well, they live in my building, and I have to maintain the peace or something.
Okay.
But yeah.
Interesting.
It sounds like excuses to me, but yeah. So no, I mean, I think people grow on you. Yeah, I think you can learn to love people. Basically, I think the point.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I don't know what this has to do with anarchism, but
everything.
Well, maybe in a sense. I mean, maybe that's really why the state is so powerful, because people are used to it so long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, like
Yeah, maybe that's what the president is. We're like, oh, we just need our one true president. That's why we're having this every 4 years thing. Is because when we find the right one, we're just gonna keep him in power. We'll just find the right guy for us, and then the right president for us, and then we'll live happily ever after, and he'll never do us wrong, and he'll always listen to us when we want to talk about our problems, and I'm just making an analogy, but I think that there's something to be said for the way we you can make some analogies. I don't know if it will work the whole time, but that's pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it might be a pipe dream, like the whole idea, one true. We'll have eventually the right people or the right person will come along and fix all our problems,
No, there's no Messiah to come to lead the way. Yeah, there is no Messiah. There's no one. It's a comfortable feeling. I mean, I guess, right? Like I'm an atheist, but like I don't believe that believing in God is stupid. But believing He cares about you, I think, is stupid.
Interesting.
And like if God exists, I think He's totally apathetic. He doesn't give a shit about your reward, and He doesn't care about your life, right? And stuff. But so I don't know.
See, if you don't think that God exists, then why do you go ahead and speculate about what He would be like personally? That's funny to me. That's a funny thing atheists do that I've noticed, is that it's like, well, if there was a God, He wouldn't be anything like the Christians say. And it's like, okay, tell me about your God. What would He be like? It's funny because you guys do have opinions about it.
I don't know. I think if God would exist, I don't know what He would be like.
Do you think He'd have a beard? Like, would He look like a person, or would He look like a person?
I don't know. I mean, I think if there, I don't know if I don't believe in God, but I think if there is a God, I don't think He'd be tangible, right?
Okay.
But, yeah. But I don't know.
Would he be like a nice person, or would he just he wouldn't care about it? He'd be apathetic.
Be a bit of a prick. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you define God? Like, is it like the creator of everything? Like, if there was a God, hypothetically, what would that mean? Where would he have to be?
I mean, I guess I would define God as that which exists, which didn't have to be created.
That which exists that didn't have to be created.
Right? Like you exist and you were created, I exist and I was created, this laptop exists and I was created. So God is a thing prior to all existence, the only thing that exists that didn't have to be created by someone.
Okay. It's interesting that you refer to, like, things that exist as creation.
Like, what do you mean?
I mean, I'm not even a person who, I call myself an atheist and stuff, but it's just interesting that you say, you describe me as a creation. You know, I was created. You were created.
By your parents, right? I mean, you
okay,
didn't just spring into
fair enough.
Right? I mean, you're composed of certain chromosomes. You're composed of certain...
not actively, though. It's kind of a passive creation. Pretty passive.
What do you mean? You're engaging in an act. I mean, I'm sorry if that's
true. But I'm saying is, like, they were like, okay, now what color is our hair going to be? I like this blonde color. That's looking good. Okay, what do you think? Green eyes? Blue eyes?
No,
you
but
see what I'm saying?
Passive creation, right? I mean, if I sneeze and snot spews forth, I'm creating that snot. You know, even if it's just like a reaction. Or something.
Yeah. Yes. The example. That's a good analogy for how I got here.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe. And so you're saying that that's like what God is that God would be like the guy who's sneezing, right? Like he's responsible for all the snot, which would be us. But he doesn't. It's not like he did it on purpose or was like. It was just like it's just something that happened. And he'd kind of prefer if it didn't. But it did feel pretty good.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I think
that's good. I think we've covered the full gamut.
Anyway, it was great having you on.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It was such an awesome discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Hope you come again.
Yay! I will. If you'll have me.